Welcome to episode 137 of Tech Sales Insights. Evan, how you doing?
Good, good. How you doing?
Excellent. Really excited to have you on here. Thank you.
Likewise, likewise. Good to be here.
All right. So everybody, this is Evan Leong, who is the founder and CEO of Product Signals. Title of the podcast is Best Practices for Sales to Help with Product Feedback. Something that is definitely missing, and we really don't hear much about it. We're also sponsored by Modigi, who is the last mile optimization sponsor of Sales Community. In order to sell more, you have to have the right contacts, and Modigi does a great job of helping with that. As always, we have Tucker behind the scenes helping. So Tucker, thank you very much for your help as well. For those that are members of Sales Community, thank you so much. For those that are not, Tucker will put up a free link. You can get a membership, salescommunity.com/summer-free. So if you want to learn more and sell more, check us out. And getting into things here with Evan. So Evan lives in San Carlos, California. He's got a kind of on the other stage of life, a 3-year-old and one that is expected any time now. So good luck with that.
Thanks.
An interest besides work and family, calls himself a music nerd, especially with rock. Pretty cool setup there. And for introduction, I've known Evan a little bit, but for full disclosure, not really that well. But we were originally introduced through Nick Candido, who is chairman of your board and also very active with an awesome group called the Angel Collective Opportunity Fund. So here's some great comments from Nick. I've known Evan for several years while acting as an early advisor, then investor, and most recently as chairman of the board. He's smart and scrappy, most importantly, passionate about how product feedback is a wildly unsolved problem in B2B SaaS. I'm excited to see how he will bring the solution to the masses as we think about all the ways that AI will drive superior customer relationships and experiences. So pretty good from your chairman. You must be doing a great job.
Awesome. That's super cool to hear. Yeah.
Cool. So let's jump into the questions here. So you went to college at Cal State Poly University in Pomona. I think graduated around 2012. So you won't we'll try not to date you too much. But your first job out of college was at Nissan.
Yeah. I was a distribution specialist at Nissan.
Awesome. And then kind of what was your career trajectory from there?
Yeah. So in Nissan, I mean, like it was just a fun, it was a good place to be, fun place to be. Like I loved cars at the time, so I was like, this is perfect. The job itself, I was, in distribution and kind of like handling, which markets needed to build like X amount of cars, per se. And the specific types. And then from there, I transitioned more into a marketing role. And after a couple of years there, I realized that I kind of wanted to just build apps. Like I wanted to learn, how to code. I want to learn how to build apps. And at the time, it was like kind of all the hype as well. And so started to take a course, like an online course that this guy had made, and it turned out to be like his first course that he ever sent out into the wild, and it sort of blew up overnight. And so I was kind of one of the first early students there. And after a couple months of his course blowing up, he was like, hey, I want to build like this out into a whole platform. And so me being one of the early members of his community, we ended up, like me, him, and a couple other guys ended up building out like a company. So it was sort of like my first real start at a startup. But yeah, from there, it was at Nissan, learned how to build, built my first couple apps, and then from there, after for 3 years, I'd say, I was working on my own projects, but then also trying to build this learn to code platform. So we had a good run. We I think we brought it from zero to, at our highest, it was like 1.2 million in revenue, and then kind of petered out a little bit towards the end there, and that's when I transitioned fully into tech. Worked at Showpad for a little bit, and then now Product Signals. So
awesome. So, product signals, your tagline is product feedback built for modern teams. How'd you ever think about starting it?
Yeah, so it was actually sort of scratching. It was a combination of scratching my own itch as a product person, and then also COVID. I had like I was stuck in the house and wanted to do something with my time, and so essentially, over the handful of roles that I've had in the tech space, I just noticed that it was really difficult to wrap my arms around the feedback coming in, primarily with CS and sales. It's all super important, especially as you start to swim upstream. Those B2B environments, it gets really, really difficult to look at data, like look at just straight analytics and make a decision. Like it's a lot more nuanced than that. Like as an example, right? Like if a rep comes, and says, "Hey, like I have a $3 million deal on the line. Can we squeeze this feature? And this is the only thing that we're missing." It's usually not a black and white situation, right? You're going to kind of dive in and try to make it work for the business, and depending on where the business is at. So being able to like hold all of those contextual items, in the same sort of spectrum, and then make a good product decision, especially in those B2B environments, is something that I, wish there was like a better way. I was trying to find a way to like handle that those situations, and so that's sort of like the origin of it. And Actually, I don't think I've ever said this before. What's funny is Protestant was actually started as a company called Deal Signals, which was essentially like a collaborative a collaborative knowledge hive for like sales reps. But as I started to do more discovery, I realized that it was difficult to get that engine going, and it wouldn't be as like meaningful. It's more of a feature rather than a company. So I sort of pivoted to product signals, but then still keeping that sentiment alive of we need the voices from go to market support CS. Like how do we get that with the context that's missing today? And so that's sort of how it all started. The second thing that really dialed in on early was closing the feedback loop. So a lot of times, in previous roles, sales reps would come say, "Hey, like any chance we're going to build this feature, in the near future?" And most of the time,
No.
it's like, "Was that?"
Engineers say no. Engineers
Yeah,
say no. What? What? Try and do something that the person that's actually writing the check for wants us to do? It's crazy.
yeah. And so like a lot of times they'd ask, it's like, "Hey, we can't right now, but like I'll keep you posted." And like that whole keeping you posted loop just kind of falls to the wayside, and that's how silos get built. So trying to break down those walls as well.
Awesome. Very cool. And you are the epitome of founder-led sales. So you're also the sales team, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
And now you didn't grow up in sales per se, right? So how have you figured it out?
Yeah, no, it's been quite a grind. So I didn't I didn't grow up in sales, and being a product person, it is especially in a startup, it's easy to kind of hide behind just building and thinking that all the answers can be solved through building, and at some point you have to sell. And so I sort of just dove into it straight. I think I started by just email or LinkedIn messaging, the max amount of people every single day, and just trying to get calls. Really, like I think uh, that was the most interesting time or experience, is because never really done that. Never really done that before. I never really gave like a demo before, so I was frantically YouTubing like how do I give demos? Like what's like the best way to sort of showcase, or just the whole discovery process. Like that was new to me. So I would say like yeah, 2020. I mean, even till now. So the past like 3 years has really been like me sort of stumbling and learning of like how to keep people engaged, or really finding if they're a good fit. I think before I would always try to like, "Hey, like you want this and I know you do," and now it's a little more refined. But yeah, started like just maxing out like my email, like emailing at hundreds of people a day, LinkedIn. And then now we used over time, uh sort of crafted our stack, but used Apollo for a little bit, and then now we use instantly.ai. So able to essentially hit the masses in terms of outbound, and then go from there.
Awesome. Cool. So in terms of your selling, then you're doing these cold outreaches mostly through email and LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And then you hope then that there's a response back that say, yes, I'm interested, want more information. And then you eventually get them on the phone.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's how the we found works best, or I found works best right now. And so yeah, we'll do. Hey, this is what we do. Really quick, really brief, and even tweaking that sort of messaging and sequences, like is but just been like every probably month I'm like changing something, from 2020 till now, just like changing something, trying to like optimize that. But we have a book a demo link and then get them on, and see if they're interested.
Awesome. And then kind of who's in your ICP, your ideal customer profile in terms of type of companies and then as well as decision makers.
Yeah, the our ICP are typically growth stage B2B SaaS companies. So our sweet spot right now is anywhere from Series A through C ish, or it's around 200 people, 100 to 200 people in the company. We found that the growth stage, or when you really start to build out your sales motion or scale it, as well as hire your first couple product managers, like that's where things start to break and walls start to form. And so that's sort of our ICP. And then, we typically sell to product leaders directly, or that's mainly where it comes out of. So, chief product officers, VPs of product. Um, but what's interesting about, I guess, like what we've learned so far is you still kind of need this checkbox from, sales or CS, or one of the two at least, just because they're going to be the ones kind of coming in the platform and helping, bring product feedback in. They want to make sure that, their team can get on board with it and it kind of fits into their stack too. So that's kind of one of the unique things about our sort of like business, or our go-to-market motion, is it kind of requires multiple check boxes, but it provides a huge learning opportunity.
Awesome. Yes, I would imagine. I mean, back in the we were talking before, but kind of early days at EMC when it was a smaller company. Um, if I'm in sales or I was running a marketing group, I would work hand in hand with that engineering group and the product group. But it seems like, especially now with COVID and Zoom, everything else, it's kind of like there's this brick wall set up between the two groups, and it's not a natural thing, right? So if it's a smaller your own company, hey, it's a common sense thing to make sure you do it. But I would imagine culturally most companies are just not dialed in or wired to kind of do this common sense thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like what's interesting is, or one of the biggest takeaways I've had over the past couple of years is like the culture varies so much. And I sort of knew that going in. Like some are really, really good at, interdepartmental collaboration, and some are just like, it's like we're in different rooms speaking different languages. But I didn't
Right.
really know like how diverse or how spread apart those were, until I really dove in and started talking to like all the teams that we have over the past couple of years. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Like the number of, I think, companies that uh are in the like, hey, we have silos, or there have been these walls built up, and if we don't do anything about them, they're going to keep building, which is even worse. Is higher than I thought. But at the same time, there are companies that like understand that and want to fix that, and it's just a matter of getting there. So
So basically, don't take this the wrong way, but because companies have poor communication, you don't have the product leadership, customer success leadership, and sales leadership orchestrating their teams. So because of that gap and that void, that's where product signals comes into play, right? You fix
yeah.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. And our goal, aside from creating like the ideal workflows to handle that, is to also aid in the culture, of that. I think like a lot of leaders understand that it's a problem now, and they want to fix it. But it's a lot to change that culture. And so over the course of our existence, sort of realize that, and baking that into our workflows, or at least just being mindful of it, is super important, I think.
Oh, awesome. But I would imagine once it comes down to it and they hear what you can do, I would imagine product teams would be like, yeah, I love it because I'm pissed at sales because they haven't told me anything. And then sales probably says, hey, I love it because I keep trying to tell the product people and they don't listen to me. Right. So it's kind of a mutual accountability.
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. I think like the visibility is like a big part of it. And what I like specifically what I mean by that is, a, a lot of times reps will say like, "Hey, I have a deal riding on this," and products like, "Yeah, yeah, like I know, but like my hands are tied, or like we're drowning." And I think both are super valid, right? Like,
Right.
"Hey, I'm trying to move business here," and products like, "Hey, I'm trying to build, but like I'm drowning in all this other stuff. Like I can't get to it right now." So like understanding, I think like for me at least, seeing the actual opportunity in Salesforce, seeing the actual like deal in HubSpot is super important. And getting a sense of like, hey, what is this going to close? Like, how much is the deal worth? Like, do they fit where we want to go? In the future, seeing all of that, I think like gets lost in the airwaves of like, this back and forth. And so absolutely, having that transparent view and having both teams understand where everybody's at with all the data, that you can provide.
Awesome. And then relative to, even though you're a product guy, no offense, but kind of from a go to market motion perspective, kind of what are some challenges now?
Yeah, so I think the first challenge is, and this has always been something something that we can continually try to crack, is how to effectively get those two or three check boxes. The product one's clear. It's like, hey, I would love this feedback and this contextual data from internal teams. Um, I just don't want to, impose a stack on somebody else. So products like pretty clear, straightforward. Uh, where it starts to get tricky, and I think this is sort of like a unique nature to our businesses, yeah, getting buy-in from like the other departments. And I think at the end of the day, getting them all to agree to this sort of like culture shift is really what it is. Because if you can get that, then it's like the stack is the stack. We will make it work. And so that's one of the biggest challenges, I think, is like we're solving for workflows and we're solving for friction points within the organization, but we're also solving for that culturally as well. And then, with the rise of or just the past couple of years of COVID lockdown, and then, like this hybrid sort of remote work thing, like I think remote work is awesome. And but at the same time, like it's harder to kind of like stay connected, with people. You can't like sit around in a break room and just like talk and like really bond with, somebody, or that just becomes harder. And so th- solving for that, solving for the cultural problems with like, I think like external factors that happen in the market has been, like one of the biggest challenges that we faced in our go to market motion. um and then the sort of like follow on to that is yeah, just budget cuts. Of course, like there's market turbulence. There's a lot of it. Everyone's kind of tightening their belts a little bit, and so getting somebody to buy into an interdepartmental tool in a tough economic time, will always be a challenge. But we're trucking along because we believe that in the long run it becomes a competitive advantage.
Awesome. And to the degree you can talk about it, how you doing with customers and revenue and any specific customer names that you can give?
Yeah, I will. So customers, we do have paying customers in market. I like to call them like our initial cohort, early adopter, paying customers. They're great. They're awesome. Uh, I won't, sort of disclose our MRR or anything like that, but yeah, no, our paying customers are absolutely wonderful. Flat file, shout out to Flat File, uh, Bonusly, and Raptor Maps, many others. Data Moran, they've been super helpful in terms of like getting us direct feedback. We have a Slack channel where we all talk, and class is another one. But yeah, they've been great, and certainly instrumental in how we built the product today.
Awesome. Very cool. And then are there competitors, or how does that look? How do you look at the competitive landscape? Obviously, there's people doing it their own or doing nothing, but in terms of head-on competitors.
Yeah. So I think they're the like two biggest ones that come to mind uh, are Product Board and Canny. Um, I think Product Board, we're more like frenemies in a way, because I do think that like they do a lot of things really really well, like road mapping and visualization, but they do have like a feedback module. I think that we sort of overlap in like the B2B feedback space, whereas like they're a little more broader, more like all encompassing. Like, hey, you can do this for your consumer apps all the way up to like larger scale enterprise organizations. And so I think there are just like parts within this like giant workflow of feedback to delivery in terms of the product world, where like these can all be like fragmented out. And so I think like Product Board and us sort of like sit in that same space. Like feedback, we have a little bit of overlap there. Canny as well. I mean, I think like the only reason why I really mention them, I don't really consider them like a huge competitor, but they are in the feedback space as well. And they're more, like like a form style upvoting. You can come in, kind of see everything as a customer, and then upvote. I actually really like them for, or they do a lot of things really well, really good as well. But though that's one of the other platforms that we hear a lot on demos. It's like, hey, I'm using Canny, today, and this is what we do. Um, so yeah, it's hard to sort of speak to like direct competitors, because I think the
But it's
usage
mostly
in the stack.
small. So if you think about the total addressable market's monstrous. You got some small players. So if anything, to the degree you collective three and whoever else there are do more, there's the market's plenty big enough. It's probably more the game around getting kind of attention awareness to say, hey, this is something that people should have.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that the s- the stack are like the stack is so much wider than I initially thought, and the solutions out there are so much more nuanced. And so, um, yeah, I think like the two that come to mind are like Product Board and Canny, but yeah, it's like it just really depends on how the organization wants to handle feedback.
Gotcha. Cool. And then with your investors, it's pretty much all angels like Nick, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Have a handful of angels that sort of like bought into the vision early, and we also strategically, but yeah, they're all like Nick. So operators understand the problem. They felt it at some level,
Yeah.
and yeah, we have a great we have great investors.
Awesome. And if it's okay to say, do you actually get help from them, or how's that go?
Yeah. We've strategically sort of also chose them because because of their backgrounds as well. So we have people that come from the sales world, CS world, product as well, and we want to hear their voice, and we want to hear their opinions. And so we'll either reach out, or have like I'll have a monthly call with Nick as well, kind of get his thoughts and opinions on certain things. But they've been super helpful and instrumental, as far as like just covering ground that I can't do on my own.
Awesome. Hopefully you're leveraging them for intros as well. So we have from
Right.
sports and nature. Sorry for not saying before. Yes. So definitely feel free to chime in with any questions or any comments at all. And we got Tucker behind the scenes who will pull those up. So sports and nature, or whoever you are, feel free to chime in there. You can either hear us or see us. We cannot see you. But again, feel free to type in any questions that you might have there. Appreciate that. So we kind of went through a lot in terms of our topic, best practices for sales to help with product feedback. So we kind of covered, there's certainly need. It's great for the product teams. It's great for the sales teams. Would imagine it also, again, back from my days selling, we didn't always listen to the feedback, but it was kind of a good smoke screen to just get in front of customers again, solidify the relationship, and usually go try and sell more. So kind of getting the feedback also helps with selling more to your customer as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%. I think that getting 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 the feedback is one thing, but then having a holistic view of, hey, like 30% of prospects want XYZ, or at least having some signal of
Right.
what the sales team's up against in the trenches is a huge indicator of the market, and like what is either happening or like what's likely to come. And so it certainly helps to sell more, and then if you kind of are able to catch it in time, or commit to at least solving the problem, and then looping sales back into that communication, it definitely helps them, and gives them something to work with when they're on those calls.
Awesome. And then obviously using product signals would be the answer, but forget about your company for a minute. Just kind of generic best practices around this. Any kind of 3, 4 things that you would suggest for companies to do today?
Yeah, the first one, I would say, if you haven't already, get the product and sales teams like in a room and figure things out, like culturally, and like how they want to do it. I think that, like, before, I used to dive in with a bunch of tactical recommendations, but like the culture is so wide, as we mentioned, the culture is so wide, like stack is so wide, and it's so hard to kind of have something super prescriptive. And so the first thing is like, get the teams in the room, or at least the leaders in the room, and try to figure out, how are we going to work together, and how are we going to communicate and understand each other, is the first thing. And I think that if you can build trust to start, then everything else kind of like everything else will figure itself out for the most part. So get them in a room, understand each other, and then from there, build processes. And I think, more tactically, if there's like a broader other bullet point, or piece of advice I could provide, it's having product teams you know give sales maybe like a playbook or a script to dive deeper and ask, like, at least product discovery questions that might be like in the initial stages. So things like, hey, if a prospect says they want like a Slacker integration, for example, instead of saying, okay, great, I'll take that back to product, hey, they want a Slack integration, it's like, let's dive a little deeper. Like, what are they trying to solve? What are they doing like right now? Or like, what are some other solutions that have a Slack integration? What do they like about that? Being able to kind of pull a little more information out of them is, I think, something that product can certainly enable sales to do. Um, those are the biggest two that come to mind. And then, another one is, yeah, figuring out like where it lives in the stack, and making it super easy for everybody to kind of get that stuff in. So, whether it's in Salesforce, HubSpot, like some sort of Slack channel, even, finding out and identifying and having clear guidelines as to like how this thing is going to work, is I think the other big piece of advice. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So we have the question here is, I'm not sure what MVS is. Is it always necessary to sort out MVS for any all MVPs? You know,
I'm I'm actually not sure what MVS is, but if I'm understanding it correctly, it might be, is it necessary to sort through everything to build an MVP? Um, and I think that it's necessary to look at as much data as possible, but committing to, like, I think it's, yeah, yeah. I think it's important to capture as much as possible, and to look at as much data as you can. But I think to identify what to build and focus on for MVP is like a whole, like a separate, discovery process. So like what's going to get my, like initial users, initial customers to value as fast as possible, with understanding that like, hey, this is my take on the solution, is um I think derived from the entire data set that you're trying to work with. So yeah, I think it's necessary to gather as much data as you can, but the sort of prioritization and whittling down, what to focus on for your MVP is you want to choose one thing, maybe two at most.
Yep. Yeah, and I think you answered it. So MVP, MVS, they're defining as minimum viable segment. So I think the point of story. So
Ah,
I, as a had been CEO of some smaller companies of engineering teams, and engineering just wants to go forever because the product's never perfect. And there's some point you got to say, look, here's the initial spec. We got to stop. We got to go to market. We got to see if there's product market fit. Let's see if there's interest. And then we can take the customer feedback and then figure out what else we want to do for the roadmap. But if you spend forever engineering, never ever product, that's kind of a going out of business model, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And like I've definitely, been guilty of that before. But yeah, and so I think looking at this question now is also to sort out uh segments. Yeah, I think it I think it actually depends, and this might be just like my, personal experience, but I think I think it depends because sometimes, like, if you sometimes you'll uncover other segments just by, getting your product or your MVP in front of them, and uncover learnings and different nuggets of information that you might not have otherwise if you had just, focused on one segment, and tried your MVP down that path. At the same time, I think there are situations where if you just focus on one segment, or sorry, if you cast a wide net and continually cast a wide net, you'll never niche down and find success with your MVP. So I hate to say it, but I feel like it kind of just depends, and it's something that you kind of have to constantly monitor and keep in check because, like you said, Randy, if you get too far in one direction and you don't look up and see where you are, then you might end up, way further down a road that you don't want to be on. So.
Yeah, totally, totally great there. And you've kind of narrowed your segment, right? If you think about B2B SaaS, 100, 200 employees, right? That's pretty narrow compared to, first of all, it's B2B SaaS near and there, but there's a lot of different tech segments and other industries and things like that, right? So if you kind of nail it there, do well there, then you can always expand into, it's probably sky's the limit, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. We've actually like identified, I think this pain that we're trying to solve is, certainly prevalent in larger companies, and the problem gets exacerbated, as you grow and as these teams get bigger, it's harder to kind of keep them all tight knit and together. Uh and so yeah, that's one thing that we've sort of had to kind of decide is like this pain exists across, a lot of segments, like, but which is the one that might be most receptive and we might be able to like get these fast feedback loops to continually build features that are meaningful. That's kind of where ICP is, but it is quite broad, and yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. So this might be self-serving question, but if you think about the kind of rev ops or sales tech stack, any predictions for the future?
Yeah, I think this is something I've been thinking a lot about lately. I think that if it hasn't, I sorry,
Sorry.
it's started already, but I think that the stacks are going to start, you're going to start seeing more platforms or tools around, like revops extend their arm across the aisle to product and vice versa. So I think like a lot of these platforms are going to start talking to each other a lot more, like having connectors, webhooks, whatever, because they'll understand like, hey, revops needs to talk to the, product ops stack, needs to talk to the, CS stack. So having that flexible but symbiotic relationship built into the platforms already is something that is going to continue to just increase. And I think you'll likely see a lot of extending their arms across the aisle into other areas of the business.
Awesome. So with your kind of founder-led sales model, you're maybe almost analogous to, could be a sales rep at any, large company. You have your territory, you have kind of the segment that you're focused in, B2B SaaS, 100, 200 employees. So theoretically, your best day would be making sure you have the lead gen engine such that all you're doing is basically just demos and sales calls every day. So that would be utopia, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, and you're laughing. So yeah, obviously it doesn't always happen. So right now you're doing lead gen with kind of email outreach, kind of LinkedIn. But I would think if you had kind of air cover from other, and it's obviously a economic thing, but if you had people that are kind of doing cold calling on your behalf and have good kind of improved hit rates, so then they're kind of teeing you up for those kind of higher level discussions. So you're kind of almost like kicking field goals all day as opposed to, hey, kind of receiving the ball on the other end of the end zone, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like that would be super ideal. But yeah, I love that analogy. We're just kind of kicking field goals all day.
So that's your ideal, right? You want to be
Yeah,
on the other side of the field.
yeah, yeah, totally.
Interesting. Cool. I might have some ideas for you. And let's see here. So with kind of being around the block and kind of, entrepreneur running your own company, are there kind of certain CEOs that you kind of respect or you've looked up to?
Yeah, yeah. There are a handful. I have been following Alex Hermosi for a little bit. I think he sort of blew up probably a year or two ago, maybe more. He's CEO of acquisition.com, and just sort of he has a ton of stuff on like YouTube now, but I think like one of the biggest things is uh he has like a very sound, articulate business mind, but then it's also coupled with I think like things that entrepreneurs typically it's not talked about in like the personal life. Like how do you like look at this from uh like your like a holistic perspective and kind of keep a level head because things can get crazy. He's able to articulate and help navigate those for I think like small startups like us. So I've been really following him lately. And let's see who else.
What,
I think
what or maybe also to any other kind of mentors that you've had along the way and advice that you've received?
Yeah, yeah. I think first, Nick Candido has been a great mentor. Um, he's I love his career and like what he does and how he approaches things, and he's a super smart guy. And so, you know, use him as a sounding board. He's been a great mentor. All of our investors really, and uh, quick shout out to one of my old boss's colleagues, Gaurav Advisor as well. Gaurav Kotak. He's been a great help, great mentor as well. Um, yeah, those are really the two that kind of stick out. As of late, but I'm sure I'm gonna remember somebody in the next couple minutes or so. Got a lot of good help from a lot of good people.
Awesome. That's great. And so for those that are watching or listening along, feel free to chime in with any other comments or questions here. Evan Leong from Product Signals. So now kind of this is kind of probably the toughest time ever to start a company. So God bless you for doing so well. Any kind of secrets or advice that you'd have to others kind of during this kind of tough economic time?
Yeah. Hmm. That's a great question. I don't know if it's advice, more so just like think like something that I've maybe just felt more and more so over the past couple years is like just keep trying to fight to see like another day. I think that especially now, like MV, like the idea of an to sort of like backtrack or contextualize this, like the idea of an MVP has uh, gotten larger, and so it's harder to it's taken longer to validate a business idea. It's, it's longer to kind of get your first customers. It's longer to find traction. It's not always, but I think on average, it is harder because there's solutions everywhere now, and so it takes longer to find that. And if you can stick around to give yourself the opportunity to get there, I think that is the what like one of the biggest pieces. So um yeah, it is hard, and it's like not easy to say like, hey, in an economic downturn or in turbulence, like just stick it through, because it's easier said than done. But at the same time, I think that's probably like the biggest thing is like, keep focusing and sustaining that belief in what you're building and what you're doing. And if you can live to see another day, live to see another quarter, you'll set yourself up for opportunities.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, some things I would think of is, which again, you've done a great job narrowing your ideal customer profile in terms of type of companies. Could be also geography, titles that you're selling to, but then also kind of what's the value prop. A lot of times I like to say, okay, if you're in the elevator with the CFO and they're talking about product signals, what are you going to say? It's not a bunch of techno mumbo jumbo. You've got appropriate value prop that you can share. And then at the same time, you love your founder-led sales, but I think also just making sure that you're focused on sales calls, demos, POCs, conversations that are leading down that sales cycle. Because if you're not focused on sales calls, everything else great, unless maybe it's a PLG model, kind of things like that. But whatever it is, you just got to be driving. So on a probably similar vein, coincidentally, so a question here is. I'm a business development manager, and I'm looking to start my own web design and digital marketing agency. So any suggestions or ideas or some tips? So some things, I think I just mentioned, which would be kind of, who are you going to sell to? What are you going to sell? What's the value? Why are they going to spend money with you? Would be, some things that would come to mind. Evan, what else from your perspective?
Yeah, I would say, as you mentioned, refine like, hey, this is what I do and like what makes me different. Like, why would you choose me, for design or digital marketing over anybody else? And then I would say the second thing is like, just try to get your first customer. Doesn't matter like how big or how small. I think getting like your first customer or somebody to at least like kind of give you a shot, gets the engine going, and you'll just like learn a ton. Like you'll continually like learn, like we're continually learning. But like getting those first initial customers, or at least just the first one, it's daunting to think about like, okay, I want to scale this to like a 6 7 figure 8 figure business agency, what have you. The first one is a huge milestone, and so refine the niche, the messaging, and then getting the first customers is, I think, what I would focus on.
Awesome. Very, very, very cool. So time flies. So, Evan, you've been awesome. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. For next week, we have Jill Harris, who's from Go2. Her topic's going to be top mindset habits to be successful in the selling environment, especially in this selling environment. So Evan, you've been great. For everybody who's been watching, thank you so much. Tucker gets it reposted across everywhere. Thanks to Modigi for sponsoring. And for those that are members of the sales community, thanks. If you're not, feel free to check us out and join. So, all right, everybody, have a great week. Thanks, Evan.